the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome everyone here this evening. We have an agenda before us. I'll move us to agenda item number 2 and ask if there's any changes to the agenda. If there are no changes, we'll operate under that agenda and move to agenda item number 3, which would be considered approval of the minutes of the work session that the City Council held on December 15th, as well as the minutes of the regular City Council meeting that was held on December 22nd. So the Council does have the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note?
I move the minutes as presented.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Larry to approve as they have been presented. We'll move to a vote. Okay, that motion passed. So we'll move to agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the consent agenda, which are the Merit Center bylaw amendment. The amendments to the Merit Center bylaws. Second on the consent agenda would be to consider the resolution designating the official newspaper. Next would be to consider the resolution designating the official depositories for city funds for 2016, declaring public works equipment as surplus property. Consider the exempt permit for Minnesota chapter of National Wild Turkey Federation / Buffalo Ridge Gobblers for an event February 20th, 2016. And then also consider the approval of the bills and the project payment. So is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants to remove for purposes of separate discussion?
Number 4.
Okay, number 4 has been asked to be removed. Any other item?
I'll move the remaining consent agenda.
I'll second.
Motion by Larry, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Now we'll move to agenda item number 10, which was agenda item number 4. Glenn?
I think Ben has some change.
Ben, you have some comments you want to make on this?
Oh, sorry, it moved on me as I was moving forward. So, okay. Thank you, Your Honor, members of the City Council. I will pull up that agenda item.
I'm sorry, it's agenda item number 9. I misspoke.
Okay, I'll pull up the proposed bylaws. We had proposed some bylaw amendments to the Merit Center Commission back at the end of December in conformance with the structure. There are a number of changes with this, primarily giving the City Council the authority to amend the bylaws and operating procedures, and it also kind of leaves it open when those might be amended as needed, typical with what we have for other bylaws and amendments. We did also deal with some quorum issues where we had difficulty kind of tracking. We have a very large board and or commission with the Merit Center. We have a number of appointments that come from particular entities to try and get a large representation of different entities that might use the Merit Center within the region. And so we have had issues with quorums in the past. In the prior language, this indicated that it was a quorum kind of constituted the majority of active members. The active members kind of make up of creating a quorum, for the Merit Center Commission. So we wanted to simplify it, which they supported. We went down to 5 members, which might seem fairly low, but from what we normally get in strong attendance, and when you factor in the ones that were actually appointed, we felt it was reasonable, and if we end up with more, that would be good. Could always get amended in the future. Councilmember Barricola did bring to my attention, which I will scroll down, one item kind of related to that quorum issue in the last paragraph that still kind of had the same language related to amendments, where the council has the authority for amendments, but the Merit Center Commission can make a recommendation. Still reference the active membership clause. That's a catch. I intended basically to treat it consistently to the other amendments. So I'd like to make a amended recommendation for the approval of these bylaws to delete those words I highlighted of the active members. I think that would deal with it, because then basically 2/3 vote would pass the recommended amendments to the city council regardless of who's all in attendance at the meeting. So I think that was a good catch, and that would be my recommendation, is to delete those 3 words from that and recommend approval of the rest.
Very good. Glenn, any?
No, that's fine. I'll move the approval of the amendments to the Merit Center bylaws with the suggested changes.
Second it.
Motion by Glenn, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. The motion passes. Agenda item number 10. Agenda item number 10, consider the preventive maintenance agreement between Carlson and Stewart Refrigeration and the City of Marshall. This is an item that was considered last time and then brought back for additional clarification. Ben?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the City Council, this was tabled last meeting. This is basically a preventative maintenance agreement with Carlson and Stewart to do 2 annual checks out at the liquor store related to our new refrigeration system of the walk-in cooler that we have. We did not, so there were a number of questions. I think I addressed all of them that the City Council had questions on, but I did speak to both the Carlson Stewart, some representatives from Carlson Stewart, and I also talked to our liquor store manager in regards to the request. The total annual cost is $610. One of the questions was, did we previously have a service agreement? And in our old store, we did not. Basically, we called when there was a problem and had it dealt with. In discussing the issue, it sounds from the discussions that I've had that it's fairly common in the industry to, for grocery stores and things to have these types of inspection checks. Basically, it's to come out and make sure that a professional is taking a look at the system and to see if it's clean. There are certain things like refrigeration leaks that the naked eye cannot see that can end up costing you more money on refilling, because refrigeration coolant can be expensive. Now, of course, this is a new cooler, so we are warranted for 12 months, so we aren't expecting, hopefully, there to be issue. There is a 5-year warranty on compressor, but sometimes maintenance issues can be issues that build up over time that you might not have problems until after those kind of warranty periods are done, so maybe being proactive on it could be done. There are things right now like finishing work related to the construction where there might have been extra dust kind of getting into the system. So the recommendation is to start it right away this year. An alternative action could be to maybe wait till next year to start the service plan. But both the manager did make a recommendation, and after speaking it through with a representative, they were comfortable as well. Unlike grocery stores and things, our product isn't quite as susceptible to changes in temperatures, either hotter or colder. We can probably get by if it's slightly off, but so we're doing 2 times per year versus maybe quarterly. I think I addressed maybe most of the questions. I can try and answer any other questions there might be in relation to this contract, but the recommendation is for approval upon further reviewing some of the questions raised at the last council meeting. Thank you.
Any others?
If you look at the agreement, the first page of it,
Pull it up. Okay.
yeah. The next page, right there. I'm looking at the terms here, and it talks about the estimates and the estimated annual cost and so forth. I mean, the 610 is not an estimate. That's a firm cost of the contract, isn't it? And then any additional costs for services and materials if something's broke would have to be paid. But I mean, why do they put in there the term estimated when that's a firm cost, isn't it?
think, Your Honor, members of the council, that's my understanding, is if they find an issue where there's some maintenance, they indicated there might be maintenance that staff could do, like some of the cleaning to explain how it would be done. There would be potentially other maintenance issues that might arise, and if other maintenance would arise, they would get basically authorization to do the extra work for it. So my understanding that it's kind of the actual cost for the labor and trip is included in that. So I would assume that it would be within that unless it was extra work was requested.
I guess I was wondering about the term estimated in two different places there as far as it says estimates and estimated. And the contract itself, it's a firm 610. I'm assuming, isn't it? Or you also mentioned about the grocery stores and having this type of contract. With grocery stores, usually there's a mixture of new and old equipment, and here it's all new. And so it'd be somewhat different than a grocery store where they're more likely to have problems with the old equipment than the new equipment. Those are my only comments.
Any other questions? If not, you have the recommendation before you on the preventive maintenance agreement for the contract amount for $610 annually. What's the wishes of the council? John?
I think maybe to address Glenn's question in the preventive maintenance agreement, they talk about that will include the task provided, but is not limited to basically if they find something, then we've got a set cost for that. I take it as that it's in there. But I think we've got a sizable investment here in the equipment that's there, and like Ben had mentioned, with dust and everything else, at least initially, anything else you want to make sure that you're operating properly. So I would move the motion to approve the agreement.
Motion by John, second by Larry. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 11. Agenda item number 11, consider the approval of the non-union wage schedules for 2017 and 2018. Ben?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the City Council, staff is recommending the approval of the non-union wage schedules for 2017 and 2018. It would reflect a 2.5% general wage increase from 2016 to 2017, and then from 2017 to 2018, a 2.75% general wage increase. These would be consistent with the ASME union contract that was settled and discussed both in closed and open meeting of past City Council meetings. We also discussed the value at that time in relation to setting out in advance these consistent with the ASME union for treating employees consistently amongst those two groups for establishment of internal pattern of wages, which in turn can assist in our other labor negotiations with remaining unsettled units that we have with our two police units with that, which remain open for 2016. And we are continuing to negotiate those. So these are a ways out into the future, but have been discussed in the past by the City Council. At the last City Council meeting, the other ones were adopted, so we'd recommend approval of the proposed wage schedules.
Are there any questions about this?
I think in all the years past, we've always taken and treated the non-union employees and union employees exactly the same. And I think that's a very huge thing when it comes to setting the budgets for the next 3 years for us to have a contract in place for our wage and labor increase. So I think this is a big step, and I think it's very important to get this done. I'm going to move the recommendation.
Second. Motion by Larry, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If there's no discussion, I'll move to a vote. The motion does pass. Agenda item number 12. Agenda item number 12, Southwest Minnesota Regional Amateur Sports Center. We have 2 change orders to consider. Ben?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the City Council, we have 2 change orders this evening for consideration. They are presented in the meeting agenda as separate motions. The first one is the one that actually has a dollar change related to it, so that's the primary one I'll comment on. I did have a discussion, follow-up discussion with our construction manager about this. Basically, the first item is changing the location of the condensing unit to a higher roof system. The sketch is included in the reference in the background materials. Basically, that results in adding some roof rails in that location with the mounting, which is where the expense comes in. That was reviewed by the architects and construction manager and made for approval. The justification for the changes is a design issue where was not enough airflow with the surrounding items on that lower roof system, so it had to be moved to a higher system. So unfortunately, it was a design issue on the mechanical system, and in order to meet the requirements of the code, had to make the change. So it falls under that category that we discussed in the past as far as kind of architect-initiated kind of changes as a result of some of the code review that we had underway with this one. So
any questions on change order number 1? Or motion number 1, which is change order number 2? If not, is there?
I'll make a motion to approve the change order.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. And then the second change order number 8. You can briefly comment on.
Yeah, this one was reviewed. I didn't do a lot of digging into this one, and I don't have the greatest memory, but basically there were some HVAC unit changes with electrical, and I forgot the
Controls.
Yeah, the controls and the venting on that one. Basically, it was a wash, and there were no cost changes. It looked to be a minor adjustment with that, so recommend approval of that one as well.
So that's a change to the contract with no change in the contract amount or contract time.
Make a motion to approve that change order, number 8.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Larry. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Move on then to agenda item number 13. Agenda item number 13, consider the resolution authorizing the use of local program income. Ben?
Thank you, Your Honor, members of the City Council. I was tardy getting this background information put in here, but I'd like to take the opportunity, since we have a fairly light agenda, to explain it and to recommend approval on the 26th. And then that way, if there are any questions, I can prepare additional information between the two as well. So, I'll pull up the map on this. The Marshall Economic Development Authority has approved the sale of 4 parcels. They were split. They were along London Road. There is a house in construction on this site with the owners/developers of the property. And with this, the agreement of the sale had some provisions on the sale price. It also included some incentives related to carrying costs, as these were being built on speculation, basically by the construction folks. So basically, it allowed, with that, which is outlined in the resolution, up to $6,000. I'm going to pull up my resolution here and just reference this. Up to $6,000 maximum reimbursement for each of the 4 homes for some of the carrying costs should they not be sold within 6 months of issuance of a certificate of occupancy. So it'd be $500 per month for each month the house does not sell. The Economic Development Authority does have the authority to enter into these contracts, and so the recommendation of the funding source, if this is ended up to be necessary, would be from funds that the City Council actually has authority over. And these funds, kind of in summary, are funds that originated from from the federal government community development block grants that go through the State Department of Employment and Economic Development deed funds called the Small Cities Development Funds. They're competitive grant applications that cities can apply for. Marshall's received funding in a series of different funding in the past. For these particular funds, of which we have about $94,000 rounding up a little bit that we currently have in our fund balance for this fund, those funds primarily originated from projects that were commercial in nature. They typically have either been residential, single-family rehab type projects, and in those cases, it's often a grant that is forgiven, a forgivable loan grant type of a program. And in the commercial program cases, such as, at least since I've been here on the tail end, some downtown facade improvement grants that were done with a number of properties to improve kind of the downtown area, typically those would be low-interest loans that would be repaid. Maybe in some cases there might be some grant components to it. I didn't dig back completely into the detail of that. So it basically works as a relending program. The City of Marshall receives money, we distribute it out for a loan to the commercial, and then they repay us back. Those monies that are repaid back are considered program income funds, and the city can use at their discretion those funds within the eligible expenditures in the future. Typically, what we've done is you can only apply, I think it's once every 3 or 4 years you can apply for these small cities funds. So typically it requires quite a bit of admin for the application of these grants. So you got to spend some money to get some money from the state. So a lot of times those consulting expenses we've taken out of this program income. And then also, if we apply for a program, we typically have to actually, under the deed requirements, we have to use up all of the extra program income funds we would have eligible for any active programs that we're applying for. So they basically like you to draw it down. On occasion, we have approved for other types of projects. We didn't apply last year. I believe we applied the year before and weren't awarded, so we should be gearing up for another application. We're actually working with Western Community Action potentially on another application in the future. But for now, this would be an eligible expenditure. We did run it by a deed, and this would be one that we could use the funds for. So the maximum liability to the city would be $24,000 based on what the EDA had approved previously from those funds. Verbally, we do have one house in construction. Verbally, I've been given an update from the EDA director, Cal Brink, who couldn't be here this evening, has had discussions is under the verbal understanding that the current house under construction is pending a sale already. So if that were to come to fruition, that would remove that liability, and the owners are looking at constructing the remaining 3 properties yet this winter, potentially getting work done and getting those other ones started because of the interest that they've had in those properties. So hopefully in the end, there is no assistance necessary on the carrying cost, but that would be a liability. Ultimately, if the City Council would not authorize the use of those funds, the EDA would be financially obligated per agreements to come up with other funds they do have control over, which would be one of 2 sources that the board would have to approve. Either the Community Reinvestment Fund, which we do for loan programs, either the local funds from that, state and federal would not be eligible for that program, or else the EDA fund balance, which has some excess reserves in it that could be designated as an alternative as well. So I did not attach the full purchase agreements in there. I could include the full document if you wanted to see that, but the resolution the EDA approved and the recommended resolution of the City Council that would ultimately authorize the use of those funds do kind of reference the general terms of those sale agreements as well. So that's a little background for you, and I know you didn't get time to really dig into that in advance. So my recommendation is if you had any immediate discussion, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll continue it as old business at next council meeting for approval. Thank you.
John or Larry, any additional input from the EDA?
I think when we move forward with these 5 lots, which after we move forward to agree to sell them to the contractors for $10,000 a piece, we cut that down into 4 lots. Because the size of the rooms or the houses that they're building require more square footage, etc. So, but the price of $50,000 is still the same. 4 lots for $12,500 instead of the 5 for $10,000. But we thought it was much more important to get those lots onto the tax rolls rather than us sitting there trying to maintain them and take care of the mowing, etc. And there hasn't been any action on that property for the last 7 years, I think. We thought if we could get some type of activity over there, maybe we'd generate a whole lot more houses. So that's why we move forward with that, and I still think that's the right thing to do, and I don't have any problem with this whatsoever. John?
Yeah, I guess that was kind of the whole idea, is just to put an incentive out there that, honestly, I don't think any of us really think it's going to be needed, but we wanted to dangle that carrot out there to get the business or get the developer going and get some activity in there. Worst case, if we do have to pay $6,000, we're looking at, what's the tax value on a house that's out there. We're going to recover that fairly quickly. But it's a way of stimulating some activity that, like Larry said, hasn't happened for a while, and now we've got something going on out there. So, got to sometimes dangle a carrot. So.
Yeah. I was going to say, just as an aside, I don't know if there's any relationship, but there have been a number of for sale signs on existing houses that suddenly have sold signs on them also. Maybe it's coincidence, but maybe just with new construction and some activity, it's spurred a little more interest out there. But I know there are houses being sold that had for sale signs for quite some time.
Questions on this for Ben or either the members of the EDA? Council comfortable with tabling this, or do you want to move forward with action?
Because there's no questions, there doesn't seem to be anything coming up at this point. I'll put a motion out there to move the recommendation. So see what happens.
Second that.
Motion by John, seconded by David for the resolution authorizing the local use of the local program income. Now discussion on that motion. David. Are you ready?
Just, Ben, from your standpoint, your recommendation was to continue it till the next meeting. Is there additional information or anything else that would, other than the fact that was kind of put on there, some of the information was put on the agenda at the last minute, is there anything else that's going to come out that would somehow influence the vote?
No, I don't have any probably relevant information that I would spend any time including, which is to give, if the council felt they needed more time to review the details of the resolution, which I know has sometimes been an issue. So that was the only reason I had recommended to continue it.
I think, and just to be clear, this recommendation is to use the program income funds for this. We're already committed with this, dangling carrot out there. That was committed by the EDA. We've got, as EDA, we've got, like I said, there's some fund balances that we could use if it's really necessary. We haven't tapped into any of our reserves. Well, actually, we have tapped some into the reserves to make sure we're covering our budget, but we haven't made any increases in our EDA. Right term would be assessments or whatever. Anyway, with the taxes that EDA can apply, so we haven't done that for equally quite a few years. And the other fund is the CRIF fund, which we could tap into as well, but that we do want to keep using primarily for industrial incentives as well. So this is making use of a fund that we have that we do need to spend down, so we can, if we're going to continue on with the small cities grant, we do need to bring this down. It's not likely we're going to use it, so we'll probably end up using it for lending anyway. But it's just designating this as a source that we can tap into if needed.
Thank you. Other motion?
I appreciate the recommendation from the city administrator here to table it, because again, when information comes to us at the last minute, I don't feel comfortable voting for something that I haven't really had a chance to look through, and I haven't. These documents that are provided here, I haven't had a chance to look through, and so at this point I'll abstain, because like I said, I don't feel like I can vote for something unless I've had a chance to look through the documents ahead of time.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll note the abstention. Agenda item number 14. Agenda item number 14 is to the acceptance of the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council $2,000 Arts Legacy Planning Grant for the Spirit of Community Sculpture Project. Ben?
Thank you, City Council. The Community Services Board, under the Director of Community Services, Wyloggy, who could not be here this evening, is helping to kind of spearhead the art project that we have out at the Red Baron Arena and Expo in the Avera Plaza, which we have some commitments to related to recent agreement actions on that. They are working in partnership with the MAFAC as well, so this is following a very similar process that they used in the past with the other downtown murals. So that includes working together. There's an semblance of a community advisory team that includes MAFAC representatives as well as even novices who don't even have an art background related to it. Our council member, he's laughing, our council member DeCramer happens to sit on that committee as well. He's kind of, I'm not sure if he's also kind of a council rep to be there. I'm not sure how Councilmember DeCramer ended up on there, but I did sit in on the kickoff meeting. I thought it would be good just to maybe give an opportunity for any questions, so I didn't put it under consent. But one of the things they're doing differently is they are working with a group called, now I'm forgetting the name. Let's see here, Mr. DeCramer, can you remind me again of the entity out of the Twin Cities? That Forecast Public Art is the entity that provides professional services. They advocate for public art in the state of Minnesota. They also have a publication, and they help with legacy grant fund solicitations and identification of artists. So they are providing assistance through this grant through the Southwest Minnesota Arts Council, an amount of $2,000. This will help in them, the Forecast Public Art, providing services to guide through this process as well. There is some coordination dollars in that's available, but they'll help us to also solicit specific artists that maybe we would struggle otherwise to be able to get to work on the project. So there is no other contribution requirements, so it's a planning grant basically on that. But I did also attach some of the background solicitation information in relation to that has gone out to the artists, kind of talking about Marshall and the project, and I just wanted to kind of give you some of this background information to be able to see kind of what they're using as a framework for it. $75,000 is the budget that's with that, and then the project schedule as well. So there is some exhibits of the proposals. There is going to be some engagement with the community. Beyond the engagement with the community, I don't believe there'll be a whole lot of city council engagement directly through this process, similar to the last ones that we have. But I believe in the end, any kind of formal agreements and with the artists and things will ultimately come back to the city council. And I think kind of involving an outside entity on some of that solicitation, I think would be good for involvement. But I wanted to kind of frame out for you kind of what's to come and what that project schedule looks like. I can't say that I've got all the details of, I'm not working directly on this project. It's, again, through the Director of Community Services, but either Councilmember DeCramer and I might be able to answer any questions that you have. But as it relates to the planning grant, we recommend approval. The grant application or the grant requirements are included in here for your information as well. That's all I have.
Thank you. Questions?
I should also note that I see on the Argus Leader I think it was this weekend, they identified one of the top 10 things to do in the next couple of weeks was to come to the city of Marshall for the MAFAC gallery that was ongoing. So, there is, the arts do provide some day trip, tourist kind of destination types of things, and this would add to that in the future. So, thank you.
I just want to make sure I understand this. So MAFAC has $73,000 in their budget that they're going to use for a sculpture?
Those are city funds related to the construction project that are designated for this.
For a sculpture?
Yes.
$75,000 for a sculpture?
That's right.
Out
Well,
of the
yes,
hockey arena.
yes, out of the plaza funds.
Okay.
That was one of the things that was included in the $2 million gift from America.
That's right.
And that also, we also have an obligation based on the capital investment dollars that were received to have a percentage, which I don't recall that percentage, but a percentage of investment in public art.
That's my understanding. Yep.
Larry?
We discussed that artist concept today at the sports meeting. Like 12 artists that have applied so far for that, and the deadline is Friday, and then that gets narrowed down. I don't remember all the dates, but I think it'll get narrowed down to 3 artists to do the concept or the actual artwork there.
You're right. There's at least this went out to quite a few artists. They have to be they have to reside in Minnesota, so it's a Minnesota art or artist. They have to submit basically a resume and a number of projects that are similar size, types. Give the range of budgets, things that are basically they're all over the place. And then on the 28th of this month, that will get whittled down to 3 that will be selected to basically come up with some form of concept or whatever, work on it. What's going to be decided, at least on the 28th, is not what the sculpture is, it's just who really the artists they're going to be working with and getting that. And that's where Bennett talked about city or citizen involvement. There will be a time when there are presentations by the artists, the 3 artists, that citizens can come in, take a look at it, talk about it, talk with them, talk with the committee members, and then make some, give opinions or whatever to see what they feel is really would be spirit of the community. That's the intent of the sculpture.
Any other questions?
I'll move the recommendation.
Motion by Larry. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 15. Agenda item number 15, consider the acknowledgement of the application for the exempt permit for Prairie Home Hospice Incorporated. Questions on this? If not, is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Larry. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to the vote. Motion passes. We'll note the abstention. Agenda item number 16. Agenda item number 16, discuss excess liquor store property sale for development. Ben?
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the City Council, this is just for informational this evening. I'm not looking for any direction of the council, but could be a closed meeting discussion at an upcoming meeting. This is kind of a illustration of our current liquor store site. So this is the new Margaret Avenue, the store. We acquired 2 properties for the development of the liquor store, and I think the first one was roughly around in this area. This one we actually purchased through a real estate listing and did include some direct compensation cash payment. The other was basically one large outlot that was part of an overall transaction with Runnings that tied in with the industrial park incentives for the expansion of their warehouse facility. So that property was basically part of what the city received in a number of different things that were included in that transaction. So there was it wasn't directly kind of dealt with separately. It was kind of all mixed in with that. So we knew that at that time that we were going to have more property than we needed for the development. We certainly wanted to be able to have expansion capabilities in the future, whether that be for parking or if you need to do some building needs. Of course, you don't design a building with a plan to expand it at least not in the immediate future, 15 years plus on our bond repayment. Certainly hope that we don't have the need to expand it at that time. Not that we don't want to be busy and active, but I think we should have a floor plan designed to be able to deal with that. So one of the things that we're looking at, it is a prime piece of property, and one of the things that's a little bit unique on this piece from maybe some in the immediate area is there are no deed restrictions on this property, unlike some of the property kind of down and around the Pizza Ranch do have restrictions that originated from Walmart related to not being able to compete with them on some of their services. You might recall we had to actually get an exception from some of their deed restrictions on this other lot that we built on, which our attorney worked through to allow for liquor sales at that location. But this site has no restrictions on that. It's also a corner lot and probably something we don't need long-term for our development. Wouldn't foresee any public purpose for that either. So, we're not generally, we don't like to sit on property that we do not need as a public entity, and maybe there's a private interest in that to try and turn that over. So I think this property fits that. So wanted to discuss with the City Council the making this available in some format for private development for consideration of sale. Haven't spent a lot of time, but basically recommending probably not more than this area. That's a 200-foot by 200-foot area. We're not recommending to subdivide it until maybe a proposal comes forward or some kind in case you wanted to slightly adjust it. But you can see in between the two, there would still be expansion capabilities. For example, we've already kind of contemplated maybe having a small staff parking area here that wasn't included in the project. They're kind of, at evening when they go for closing, this has typically been the prime location. So to park over here at night, they'd have to walk through the lot, so maybe they could be closer, more accessible. Also for snow removal, to have a rollover or a flat surface at the curb rather than a raised curb might be good. But we don't need to do those things, but that's an example of something you might do in the future if you wanted larger truck parking or something that might be able to do. But basically any of the reasonable needs you'd have, we'd expect there'd be the capability to add that. We do have, I believe down here, these are service connections that in the future, if there was a need to connect in, we do have service lines that were planned with that street, so that would be available for a development to occur, which would be desirable. So staff's recommendation would be to kind of formally make it available in some format, go into closed meeting, maybe the next council meeting to discuss what those terms and prices might be. Ultimately, our recommendation would be those that would make it contingent upon an actual development, where there'd have to be a development proposal. You'd review kind of the development plans. Generally, the zoning should be a compatible use with a liquor store, but ideally it's something that's kind of complementary and not something that would be a negative impact on the store. I can't think of any examples of what that might be. But the council could talk about just making it available and selling it too. Staff would recommend that the proceeds would either go back towards the cost of the street reconstructions related to kind of pending assessments, and or the construction fund or debt service fund for the liquor store would be another option. So that could be decided later. But I at least wanted to have the policy discussion of making that property available, give you the opportunity to discuss this evening, and then at a future time talk about maybe those terms and conditions in a closed meeting setting as well. That's all I have this evening in relation to the council. I did talk to the architect as well to see if he saw any additional property needs. He felt this would be adequate with that. So,
just a non-input, just question. From this area we're talking about to probably east or towards the Menards building, we don't own that section, but is there any restrictions on the land that would be adjacent to that? And what I would call behind it. If somebody really wanted to, they could have a pretty large area out in there. Is that?
I believe, this is off of my memory, and I'd want to verify that, but I believe there might be restrictions on all of this property. It's one ownership, but I wouldn't want to say absolutely that that's accurate. But they can seek sometimes exceptions from that as well. So maybe there's a use that they wouldn't need to be excluded from that as well, where that they'd want ours as a piece of a larger property, or maybe contemplate if their building would fit on here, but the parking lot wouldn't. they might be able to get around some of that due up. But that's a legal issue. I'm not sure if you could do that or not. But
Pretty much the only one that has a lot that doesn't have restrictions.
other than I'm not sure about. I'm sorry, down here. I don't know if any of the ag land that's on the other side of Windstar Street. I'm not sure that those have any restrictions. I think it's primarily that piece around between between Menards and our property that's still left. That's kind of in that. Yeah, in that area.
Any other input? Since there's general support to moving forward and establishing price and terms.
Okay, we'll do that.
With that, then we'll move to agenda item number 17. Is Council Board Liaison Report from, sorry, my part,
We didn't list our.
Okay,
it doesn't look like we got our listing of boards and commission appointments, so you have to go off of memory. Sorry.
okay, we can
about
go by memory then. Mine have not met since we last met. The Southwest Regional Development Commission meets this Thursday, and actually the Marshall Firefighters Relief Association, the Trust Association, has their annual meeting at 7:30 this evening. Both Tom and I will be attending that. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Council, the library board met yesterday afternoon and did election of officers. The county has yet to make their appointments. That'll happen at their next meeting, I believe next Tuesday. And there was some discussion about whose terms were up, and I'm glad that's the county's issue to settle. And but we did do elections. Bill Cole was elected the chair. Will Thomas is the vice chair, and Glenda Vasecki continues as the treasurer. And that was really kind of the big part of what happened, and obviously just getting ready now for Michelle, the new director, to arrive next week. And I know that she's scheduled for. I think they're going to grab some of your time, Ben, and she's going to meet starting in the day on the 19th, and then. Will give her a ride up and drop her off at City Hall, and then I told him that because he's got a class to go to then that communicate with me, and I'll come and pick her up and give her a ride back to the library so we don't strand her. Otherwise, we could have her ride transit. But we'll pick her up the first time, and then she can ride transit. So that's really all I have.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
Monday, personnel met, and we went over all the computer security issues with all of our computers that are within the city, and we're going to look at right now partnering with MMU on their service contract that they have as far as that goes. Sports Center met today, discussed where the building is at now. Everything appears to be on schedule. The scoreboard is in place. Most of the lights are up. Seats are going to go in the end of the month, first part of February. And then we discussed as far as the artist concept is going to go. And then RFPs are going out next week as far as sponsorships and ads in the arena and the billboards and ball fields, etc. From there. That'd be it.
Okay, thank you, Larry. Glenn?
The Housing Commission met yesterday, and they approved a fire and carbon monoxide detector policy. And if the residents violate the policy, the penalties are $25 on the first offense, $50 on the second offense, and on the third offense it would be at least termination. I think I mentioned before that the high-rise has a new roof that was put on late last year. It was inspected. There were a number of defects. Most of the defects have been corrected. There's still some that have not been fixed, and we're having a hard time getting the general contractor back to fix those. But enough money has been withheld that if the general contractor doesn't get it done, we'll just have to hire somebody else to make the necessary repairs. And the Planning Commission hasn't met. So.
Mine have not met since the last meeting. We've got Ways and Means coming up later this week, and EDA meeting next week.
And David?
Airport did not meet last week, no pending business, and nobody else has met yet.
Then we'll move to agenda item number 18. Council member individual items, Craig?
Nothing, Mr. Mayor.
Larry?
I have none.
Glenn?
I have none.
David?
Next Tuesday, some of us from the transportation group will be meeting with MnDOT to discuss Highway 68 safety.
David and or Ben, are you going to talk about the 10 grant award?
It was, but you can comment on it.
We'll hold that till we get to you then, unless you want to say something. John?
Done.
Okay. One of the things I want to do this year is thank people and certainly the because I think that's a healthy thing to do, to express gratitude, and I think tonight the street department for the snow removal that has happened over the holidays and weekends and scheduling probably was a challenge, but they did a great job. So you could pass that along then to that department.
Yeah, I'd be happy to pass that along.
Very good. So with that, we'll move then to agenda item number 19, which I believe is staff reports.
Thank you, Your Honor. Member of the City Council, I'll give you a verbal listing. One is the you either have received an email or will when you get back to take a look. I think we contemplated a work session next week, but we weren't for sure. And this morning I told Councilmember Sturrock, no, we're not going to have it. And then I emailed him later saying, I changed my mind. We've had some staff meetings, and I think we need one. So I'm going to be recommending that we do have one. We'll try and limit it. I'm thinking no more than a couple hours, start a little earlier at 5. One of the items on that we'd like to discuss is the Sports Center project, and we'll hopefully have some updated numbers. We've been talking about some cost estimating on the ball fields in preparation of a bond issue on that one. So hopefully we'll gear up for that. Just some updates on the project, too. We are having, as I indicated, weekly construction meetings on that as we kind of near towards the end of the completion of that. The architects are working on B3 benchmarking requirements as part of the state bond funds that we get. So they're in the construction phase of that and finalizing it. So hopefully what that will mean is there won't be any added conditions that we have as part of that final benchmarking. So we'll see as we kind of work into that final amount for that. There are some of the bigger items kind of as we near the end of the project, we kind of get engaged where staff has to do kind of separate contractual issues. So we're working on scoreboard, kind of part of the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, scoreboard locations, design of that. Of course, in the second arena, we're going to be relocating scoreboards from the current arena and reusing those, but in the new one, we'll need new scoreboards with that. So we're working on some electrical needs to those areas, which would lead to some change order items for those needs. We're working on exterior signage issues. I'm working on that. The Schwann Food Company agreement with the land donation did have requirements that they approve the design of that. So I'm working on quotes that are out right now on that, and an agreement that would be coming forward with Schwann's participating with the city in the cost of that exterior signage. That would be part of that. There is some items that weren't included in the budget related to a permanent built-in table for the scoreboards, kind of like where you'd be set up if you have the radio station doing some coverage or running the operator of the scoreboards, kind of having a long table where you'd have some electrical and conduit built in would be items that we're going to talk about next week when we've got some experts in town to look at that. And then there were a couple of changes this morning related to some wall work that we have that I don't have enough information this evening, but that will be discussed next week as well. There's other little things that seem to take some time, like data lines to be serviced to the building and phone lines that are needed for, the elevators and the HVAC systems and things. So we're continuing to do that, as well as starting to probably get into some of the interior design elements as well to kind of finish things off. Chairs, tables, those kinds of things that are Kathy Lee, my assistant, has helped on the other projects and is coordinating some of those issues. So more to come next week on that project. The mayor alluded to the TED grant, which was in the newspaper as announced by deed. Of course, they like to kind of control the press releases related to that, so we don't get much advance notice of that coming forward before it's issued to the press. We didn't get quite the full amount. We got $666,000 though, so a very hefty chunk of funds to basically replicate the intersection that we did on Lake Road extension for the Sandstegard Industrial Park. This would be kind of the next road down, which is a gravel township road currently on what we're calling Commerce Park, the future industrial park that we're gearing up for. Basically to have acceleration lanes similar to what's on the other one would complete this. So there would be some local match with that. I'm working on the funding with that and expect that there'll be agreements coming forward. It would be a 2016 project. With that, we are separately applying for an infrastructure grant. So if it kind of falls into place, it would be similar type of funding and grants we would get that we got on the Sandstegard Park. I don't believe that's been submitted yet from the EDA, but Marcia and Cal have been putting in time along with engineering staff providing the cost estimate updates and things on that infrastructure to basically extend the road down. There has been some changes due to some the passing of some owners in the area related to that road access that I talked about, that township road. Cal Brink's leading some discussions working with the city attorney on negotiating the acquisition of the right-of-way with that project, which I think is going along well. So there will be some activity coming forward, and we're also reaching out to the prospective business that might have some interest in being the first kickoff on that project. So that's an exciting one. I think because DEED also has their fingers in the TED grant award, it's a positive sign for the infrastructure grant application that the same people will be taking a look at that application. Doesn't guarantee it, but certainly doesn't hurt that they've already funded some directly related to that. So kudos to staff who worked on that application, particularly Marcia, who kind of herds everybody to make sure they're getting their piece of work done and turned in on time. So exciting project that we got awarded for that as well. I didn't get into a whole lot as far as who the other recipients were, maybe in our region, but certainly this was a big one for us. Anything to add, Mayor, on that? Okay. I am processing on some of the other DEED grants, or the other state bond grants that we got. I'm processing now that we have the ethanol prop that we've received, which I've inserted some photos in the Director of Public Safety's report, which Rob is here tonight. Is going to talk about the Merit Center a little bit. So now that we've received that, we can request reimbursement of that, and the Merit Center is nearing the end of that project completion with the simulators. Once those are installed, I can submit for reimbursements on those bond dollars into the project funds as well. So I'm working on both of those for reimbursements. Sheila Dubbs will be leading the trail grant application, so she's waiting direction on the application for early review submission in February. So we're gearing up for that application, as we've talked to in the past for the Marshall Golf Club section that I won't get into detail that we talked about in the past. We are going to have DEED will be in town with their housing division related to some grants. They're coming in the first week of February. The Western Community Action is getting involved in some additional housing programs and is coordinating a site visit to Marshall to pursue potential related projects that workforce housing grants might be applied for. That could be multifamily, single family, as well as maybe some downtown related projects making use of some spaces there. So staff will be meeting with them at that time. Tallgrass Liquor kind of bounced around to different topics. I haven't been tracking too closely, but we had a successful kind of first full month at the end of the year. Of course, it was one of our busiest months of the year. It was also our grand opening month, but we saw a 20% increase in gross sales from last December to this December. So a nice start to the sales at the new liquor store, and continuing to kind of track those as we go forward. Library Children's Wing financing, I've been assisting on some making sense of some of the final payments in relation to those issues, working with a number of people. We'll just leave that one at that. I'll be, as Councilmember Schaefer indicated, the director will be starting next week, and I'm not sure if you mentioned this. I was distracted a little bit, I have to admit, when you were giving your report. She will be, I believe, coming to the former chair, Gwen Sturrock, is kind of arranged for her to potentially come to the next council meeting to meet you as well on the 26th. So we'll be working on that. Airport hangar, there still is ongoing interest with the business on pursuing that. So after the first of the year, we've been continuing to work on that issue. The Highway 23 safety study, I think I'll add on the work session because we just haven't gone into a lot of detail, but I think that would be good to kind of give the council a little update, walk through kind of the schedule on that and some of the things. Jason has an update. I actually inserted that document under your report as well. So he'll give a little update on some of the things happening out on Highway 23 in preparation of that study. And my last item for the night is budgets are due at the end of, are going to be planned to be printed up kind of at the end of January. We like to have good year-end numbers on the actual line item, which is why we don't distribute it out kind of right away. So that'll be coming. So that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Any questions for Ben? Thank you, Ben. Yep. Jason?
Thank you, Mayor. As Ben alluded to, SRF Consulting will be completing traffic counts this week on Highway 23 at most of the intersections between County Road 33 and County Road 7, and you can see up on the screen the locations they'll be looking at. So as you're passing through there, you may notice their equipment, some cameras and things like that. But so that'll be going on this week. And I don't have too much more to say about that at this point, but beyond that, engineering is just working towards getting our projects ready for next year. So
maybe we should add, though, that MnDOT will also, separate from the safety study, they have awarded the passing lanes between here and Jasper, so that construction will start this spring, and I believe they're set to, unless they've already done it, awarded the 3 that are north on Highway 23.
I believe that's true.
The ones north of Granite Falls, correct?
There's one by Hanley Falls, right?
Oh, there is. Okay.
I believe by Hanley Falls, yes.
Yep.
And
Just hopefully everybody heard Jason. He's not quite as loud as me here, so I want to make sure that on this attachment too, there are people out there installing video cameras in some of these locations, and I know some people get a little sensitive when there's, video cameras going up in some locations. So it is out there. They are not collecting any personal data. It's not related to law enforcement actions. It's related to traffic count analysis and taking a look at flow of traffic patterns out there with that. So that is the document included in here. Sorry, Jason. Thanks. I want to make sure that they heard that. So.
No problem.
anything else, Jason?
No, that's it.
Okay, then we'll move on then to Dennis. I think you're next.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The Marshall Square Edition plat and supporting documents were filed. It wasn't without a little angst or consternation. The Lyon County Recorder's Office and my office kind of had a direct line there for a couple of days. It seemed like we'd be close, and then they'd find something else that needed to be corrected. But by the end of the year, everything was recorded, and those documents have been returned, so that the mall redevelopment project, we've got the paperwork filed for that. And also that small piece of property that the city acquired from MnDOT at the intersection of Bruce Street, that was conveyed to Avera. So Avera has paid for the property, the city has sold it. So I would think you'd see a parking lot expansion going in there soon. So just a couple projects that we did finally finish them up.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions for Dennis? If not, we'll move then to the next agenda item. The agenda item number 22, report from Director of Public Safety, Rob Yan. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you. Welcome, or thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thought especially with everything going on at the Merit Center was sort of time to give you a little bit of an update. And one of the things, not the biggest one, but something we've been at for quite a while, so having it arrive seemed very momentous for those of us that have been working on it. And Mark Clath especially has taken the lead with this to get it done. But this is a result of some funding that we'd gotten from the legislature to fund this and then the wind tower training project. And if you look at this, the black area in the front is basically what you'll have with a low pressure rail car as far as the top deck and how you would get in or where you'd have leaks. The back part is what you'd have for a tanker, a road tanker, and they're exact parts. They're from damaged tankers, but intact, and that's on its side so that you can see it. And in terms of a training prop, it does turn as a real tanker would in a turnover. And then on the other side, the back side, then you have what you would have on the bottom side. Again, you've got actual valves and piping that you would have for a rail and a tanker. So those will be, that is a wonderful prop that we've got. The intent is to store it inside the Merit Center so it has some training opportunity during the year. And then that'll be an outside predominantly during the summer months. That's one of the things as we put in concrete. That's, as you look at it, especially for the money that we spent on it, a very valuable and a very timely prop. So that'll be a nice asset for us to draw people here. So that's one. The other thing, then today we had a couple things going on. We had the driver simulator installed. So that was delivered today and installed, and I tried it out. And
You didn't get hurt?
well, that was part of the point. I wanted to try the extremes. You know, I said, give me some snow. And it's interesting, you even hear the snow hitting the simulated windshield. It's got simulated windshield wipers. They're
Can you reach out the simulated window and slam
no. You know, it's not quite that real. But it'll be a strong experience. We've got set for in 2 weeks the force simulator to be installed. That'll be there. We had, and it's Matthew Leslie had worked to bring in some high quality training as sort of the kickoff for what CVB was doing to help us promote training coming in, and that took place today. And spent the morning there, and that was a very high quality speaker. One of my staff had heard him at a national conference, and as a result, we had basically all of our supervisors and detectives that we could spare there, and they all thought it was worthwhile. We had a very positive, we had people from our regional police chiefs, our regional sheriffs, the West Central chiefs, and the West Central sheriffs. There was probably 30 law enforcement supervisors and executives there, and everyone was both impressed by the facility as they could see it and the quality of the training. And so, you know, I think it left a very good taste for everyone that had that experience, and that was really the intent, to draw them in. Gave them a limited view of the track, but they all thought it was a highway. What's that highway just across the road? Well, that's our training track. Wow. So we got some wows, as much, again, as you can see from across the road. So I think there's a real excitement that's coming with this. I don't know if any of you remember, but the inside of the old classroom, the CAD office, the exterior of that area has all been painted and looks much, much better. I mean, it was 15 years old and in a working area, so it was time to be freshened. It's got new paint, it's got new carpeting, and really looks professional. Still need ceiling tiles to go in, but again, especially as we get this stuff in. Classroom was used and worked well. We had, as I said, probably 35, and that was very comfortable level. We could have handled a few more using one side of the classroom. Driver's Ed has started. They had their first program out there last night, I think. They've started, so they've got the Driver's Ed meeting out there. So we've really got the ball rolling. The audio and some of the upgrade in terms of the electronics is going to be installed in about 3 weeks. So between the force simulator and that, I think it'll wrap up as far as the upgrade. But it's looking good. It looked very impressive and had very positive feedback for everyone out there. I guess just as long as I'm here, touch on a couple other things. One of the things we've had two, what we call the EVOC, the law enforcement vehicle training. We had two of those and drew people from throughout the region there. And all were impressed with the track, the skills pad, and the appearance went well. One of the commentaries that I got from staff that drove in that was how well the Ford SUVs that we've gotten for our patrol operations worked, and that together with the snow, those have really proven their value in those settings and impressed staff. And again, they weren't sluggish when it came to driving. They did well, weren't impaired with the snow that we've got. So I think those have been a good investment and helped in our efficiency for our patrol operations. I guess on the downside, we've had some burglaries going on. On one of them, we have two outside cameras that we've got. They're fairly old, but we do have those. We got an image of a burglar on one of them, not enough to make any identification, but we got a time and a general image. But it did sort of identify the value for having cameras out and about for businesses and that to have those. But it's under investigation. We've offered rewards that, but we basically think it's a professional doing that, and it's going to be challenging to get someone. I'm meeting with the chamber tomorrow to try and meet with some of the businesses to talk in terms of things that we might put together to help businesses be more effective as far as deterring or apprehending when they have violations. So moving on that and sort of see where it goes. Again, that's sort of the downside of us become a little more of a regional center is you get some of the bad with the good, but again, compared to other regional centers, still low. I guess that's sort of the lull as we get when we have that. People tend to not think it can happen to them, and even though it's rare, it can happen. So if we can get people to do a few things to again help with the deterrence or apprehension, it'll help. Other than that, for us, it's been relatively uneventful. The first snow events are also something we're involved with because we end up clearing the streets to clear the streets, and those have gone relatively well. I think there was good coordination with the street department and with some of the notifications we've done, in November and again now. I think we had fairly good, probably above average compliance, as far as vehicles moved. But we do restate the importance for cars to move. There is the ordinance that they move every 24, and we can tow after 48. We typically don't, but it becomes much more visible with the snow. So we really just encourage the residents to remember to move their vehicles. And part of the reason for that is street cleaning, or in the winter, snowplow removal, or snowplow clearing. It helps avoid, snow being really set on the streets. So that's about it. We're posting for a part-time community service officer. We've had one get a full-time job with the sheriff's department as a deputy, another one that's working for the jail, and as I said, she's going to help us out since we lost the one, but going to be done in about a month, and our third part-timer is being backgrounded by another department, so we're going to do that. We're going to be meeting with setting up the thing with our police advisory board to try and bring on one, maybe two part-time police officers, and have that staff, and so we'll be going there, so as well as members for our hazmat team, the CAT team, just to bolster that up. So we're going to do our bit to help keep Sheila busy. So that's sort of it for public safety, and available for any fire departments, I guess, in their final stages of hiring. Did interviews there. So they've got a couple candidates. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Rob. Questions for Rob? No, thank you.
Thank you.
Move on then to agenda item number 23, the pending agenda items. Any questions about the pending agenda items?
Need some updates, so we'll be working on that.
Okay. Agenda item number 24 is the information items, including the building permits. We'll go to agenda item number 25, the listing of upcoming meetings. The work session to that. And then that brings us to agenda item number 26 to consider adjourning. Motion by Larry, second by David to adjourn. Discussion. We'll move to a vote. All those in favor of adjourning say aye. Aye. Those opposed, we're adjourned.
That's a pretty silent yes.